We're now joined by CBS play-by-play broadcaster Andrew Catalon. Andrew, thanks so much for taking the time.
It's great to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Andrew, you were in an interesting booth this year because you were in a three-man booth plus a sideline reporter. So what was it like to work with Tiki Barber and Matt Ryan up in the booth with you?
Well, we had such a fun season. Matt and Tiki are both so gracious and so much fun to be around. And it was really interesting to have the perspective of Matt, who was just off the field. I mean, he knew so many of the players and the concepts and the coaches. And of course, Tiki's not that far removed either. So we had so much fun, but there is a challenge when you do a three-person booth. When to get in, the timing, whose turn is it? It's a little more difficult for the two of them. I mean, for me, it was call the play and then set one of them up. But there's a lot of hand signals in the booth. There's a lot of eye contact. I think that part of it was really important for us to have good chemistry away from the booth, so that carried over inside the booth.
For someone that was a first year on the job like Matt Ryan, what did you guys do early on to prepare to be in that position?
Yeah, I give Matt a lot of credit. I mean, I've been doing Bills preseason games for several years now, and he came with me to one of those games just to shadow me and Steve Tasker. I mean, I don't think a lot of people would want to go to, Buffalo in the middle of the summer, even though it's beautiful in the middle of the summer there. But he did. He came to the production meeting. He sat in the booth. He had the headset on. And then we, as a team, did a preseason game together on CBS. And I thought that was really important. But I think the big thing is chemistry. I think maybe when I was in school, you don't really think about that as much, right? You're thinking about how you get that first job out of college and how do you sound. And not that there's anything wrong with that as you're making your resume real, but I've really learned that it's how do we sound and how do we gel together. And that's what makes a successful team in this business. So I think that the work that we put in, the dinners that we put in, the golf that we put in away from the booth really helped us throughout the season.
Is there a particular funny story from those golf outings or from those dinners with the two analysts and the production team that sort of stands out, especially from this past year?
Well, it's sickening that Matt is that good at golf. It's not like he's been playing it his whole life. He just started like when he was just got into the NFL, and then you go out there and you're like, how can I even like be on the same hole as this guy? But that led to some fun moments as well. And we were, and AJ Ross is a terrific sideline reporter, and our producer and director. We all got along really well. We're all a similar age, and I thought that really meant a lot throughout the year.
Guess it's something about CBS football analysts being good at golf.
Yeah, good point. Very good
Andrew,
point.
anything about this current season stick out to you the most, throughout your CBS career? Are there any games that kind of really stick with you?
It was funny. I did the Jets-Giants game, and I'm from New Jersey, so that meant a lot to be able to do a game like that because it's a rivalry. It's a fun rivalry. It's not like heated, but it was still neat to do that. And then it turned out to be one of the worst games of the season in terms of on-field play with the punts and overtime. But it was so bad it was good. It was fun. My family was with me in the booth, so that was special. And Matt, Tiki, and I, we had fun with it. And even though that wasn't a game that they'll put on, NFL Network anytime soon and run it back, it's still pretty memorable for me.
Well, in that game, that was the Tommy DeVito game, right?
Correct.
Come in. So, what was it like to sort of, you said you live in Jersey, to have a guy who's living with his parents in New Jersey and sort of see him step onto the scene. And I know they didn't really let him throw a pass, but still to call a game with DeVito and that story and the Syracuse background too. What was that like?
Yeah, so that was pre like Tommy Cutlets, everyone going crazy. That was his first taste of action. And as you said, they didn't really let him throw the football. So as the game was going on, I thought, all right, maybe at halftime they'll work out a few plays or something to get him going. But it just really never happened. I mean, he threw a couple of passes in the second half. That whole dynamic and that whole part of it added to how crazy the whole game was. So, yes, it was the first taste of Tommy, but we didn't really get a lot of Tommy because they didn't throw the ball.
Now, leading into 49ers Chiefs on Sunday, what about that matchup is exciting for you? Because there's a whole lot going on both sides, and there's stories outside of the game too that are interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's something that I know you guys have been talking about and we'll talk about all week, the other part of it. But from a football perspective, I look at a San Francisco team that has not been very impressive in the playoffs so far. I tip my cap to Green Bay. They played a good game, but I didn't think the 49ers looked good. I tip my cap to Detroit, but the 49ers did not look good in that first half at all. And then they were able to come back. So I want to see which 49ers team shows up. Is it the team that played the second half against Detroit, or is it the team that we saw the prior three halves in the playoffs? And then Kansas City, it's just so hard to pick against them. I mean, for the whole year, I thought this was the year they would not get it done. Mahomes has to go on the road. It's not going to happen. I think something really clicked with their offense in the game against Buffalo in the divisional round. I think the last two games are the best we've seen their offense look. And if they play that way again on Sunday, it's so hard for me to pick against them since they've been in this spot before.
Staying on the Super Bowl itself, it feels like a whole new wrench has been thrown into this game because of this Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce connection thing. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on how it's portrayed, because it seemed like it was portrayed a lot and it caused, an uproar, and now people are talking about it all over the place. So I'm just curious to hear what you have to think about how it's covered in front of a football game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people that thinks it's great. I'm happy for them that they have found romance, and I think that it adds to the game. I mean, I think that I'm hearing people who have daughters who maybe didn't watch football who are now watching football. I think that's really cool, and that's great. And if it's because of her, then fantastic. As far as how it's covered, I don't have a say in any of that, but I did read that she was on camera for a total of 44 seconds in the AFC Championship game against Baltimore. So I can't imagine that someone would get so upset. 44 seconds out of a 3-hour game showed a shot of her. So I personally don't have a problem with it. Again, I'll have nothing to do with it on Sunday, even though it's on CBS. But I think it is a story, and it should be covered to the degree that it's been covered so far. I think it's been appropriate in my mind.
Andrew, you mentioned the Bills a little earlier, and there's plenty of people in Central New York that care a lot about the Bills a lot. Just from covering them these past few years and doing all their preseason games for a while, what do you think is kind of their path now that they just can't get past the Chiefs? And it felt like this year was a really, really demoralizing.
I agree with you. This is a tough one to swallow. I hate using this, and I know every team can say this, but I thought that especially in that divisional game, the injuries they had on the defensive side of the ball really caught up to them. I mean, Matt Milano, Tre'Davious White, Daquan Jones. I mean, guys were dropping like flies. Terrell Bernard didn't play, the linebacker. I just think it was too hard for them to overcome that. Now, if you're a Bills fan, you're saying, well, when is it going to be our time? And I hear you. When is it going to be their time? This is the window with Josh Allen. And, Cook had a great year. I don't think that they're in a place where you rip it up and start over again. I think that they got to reload and just hope that they can stay healthy. I think with Josh Allen at quarterback, they're going to have a chance to compete every year. It's just finding a way to get it done here in the end and hopefully having a little bit of luck on their side, which I think has been against them these last couple of years.
And the two worst words that they want to hear in wide right. It was, like you said, demoralizing. Yeah. It was really tough. Andrew, I want to transition a little bit away from football, going into the college basketball scene now as the season moves into college basketball. I'm sure you've been asked a lot about this, but the FDU beating Purdue game in terms of the final stretch, how that final call kind of came about, and just sort of thinking about my words are going to match the moment. How does that thought process happen? And what do you remember from that game in particular?
Yeah, so I remember first half it being close and our producer, Bill Thayer, saying in my ear, hey, should we show the flashback of Virginia losing to UMBC? It was like 1 minute to go in the first half. And I said, absolutely not. Like, we've seen this movie before, that the underdog plays well for a half and then the favorite comes out of the locker room and the game's over. So I remember just in the first half being like, let's just play it out. Halftime, texting a couple of Syracuse friends and saying, hey, yeah, FDU, believe it, like joking around. And they're like, hey, that's actually pretty good. I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's not going to happen. And then sure enough, we like at the under 8 timeout of the second half, it's probably when I told myself, okay, it's okay to believe that this might happen, that this is a real thing that we're seeing. And from those 8 minutes in, I really thought that it could happen. And then in the end, when you're thinking, all right, well, this, as you said, is going to be replayed for a long time. How do you want it to sound? I just circled back to my halftime text with my buddies and thought, well, why not? So that's kind of the way it went in my mind. And certainly a game we'll never forget. It was so great to be with our crew and Steve Lapis. We've called so many games together, but that's got to be at the top of the list.
So as you're kind of in your NFL offseason right now, gearing up for college basketball, what is that transition period like for you every year?
It's so different. I mean, football is so intense with 53 guys on each team. It's 106 guys every week. I'm still old school, the way I learned it at Syracuse and WAER, and I handwrite all my boards. So it takes me all week to really prepare for a football game. Basketball is a different rhythm, right? I'm doing 2 games a week. So it's turning around a little bit quicker. And there's really only 8 or 9 guys I've got to learn on each team, which really makes it easy. And I see a lot of the same teams. I do a lot of Big East games, Big Ten games. So there's some carryover. The thing that I've found hard now is that I usually go back to my previous year's charts, but the players change so much in college basketball that it doesn't help me that much from one year to the next. But it's just a different feel for college basketball, doing more games, but having to learn less players and fewer teams.
Andrew, you talked a little bit about your preparation. In terms of the season, the trajectory of the season also changes with time. So I guess for the NFL, as the season went on and you get to week 15, 16, 17, there are playoff implications on the line. So how do you control putting those stories out there and making sure that, okay, I got to talk about the playoff implications of this game? And I guess it also pertains to March Madness when that comes time in college basketball season.
Yeah, I think the big thing is you've got to stay locked in the whole season. You can't just pay attention, what's going on in December or what's going on in March for basketball. I mean, you're going to miss storylines. And the thing is fans today have so much access to information, whether it's on X or Instagram, or there's a million ways to find information about your favorite NFL team. So if you don't stay up to date, you're going to get exposed on the air. And that's the thing that I always think about, is that when I was a kid watching Yankees games and the national crew came in, I didn't want to ever think like, all right, well, this guy didn't watch my team's games the past 2 weeks. So I don't want fans to think that about me when I come in to call their NFL team or when I come in to call their college basketball team. So I think that it's very easy to get exposed in this day and age, and you've got to do your homework. Otherwise, people will know.
Now, you mentioned being a part of WAER like you were, and congrats on being a WAER Hall of Famer now.
Thank you.
Like Ben and I did, and like a lot of people here at Syracuse do, we start with radio, and we've been doing it for years. And then a lot of time people like yourself transition into doing a lot of TV work. Is there anything you miss about kind of the bulk of it being radio broadcasting?
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough transition for me because everything in college was pretty much radio, and then I flipped the switch. So I miss it. I haven't done a game on the radio, man, probably play by play since college. And I think that there's that's the way that I learned, that I fell in love with broadcasting, was falling asleep, listening to Yankee games on my headphones. And then my parents would have to come in the room after I fell asleep and, take the headphones off. So I love radio. It's completely different than TV. I think that, there's more storytelling involved in television, but there's less X's and O's, which I love. But you get to paint that picture in radio that you don't need to do in television. And I think that's kind of the way I miss, like, pretending that someone has no idea what they can see because they can't, and painting that picture. It's an adjustment, but I do love the TV side, but I miss the radio side.
Staying on WAER, obviously Jack and I, we do WAER, and we've been fortunate enough, been very lucky to go on a lot of trips and have a lot of experiences calling games. And I know you said some stories when you were inducted into the Hall of Fame last year, but is there something that you remember with your buddies that you texted with during that FDU game in your moments in your time at WAER?
I have so many memories of calling games at AER, and I think that, you know, a lot of those, you know, I still, when I was there, Jamie Say and her era, they had a sheet of play-by-play terms for basketball. And it was, you know, everything that you would say for the right wing, the left wing. I think you guys may still have something similar. It might not be the original copy that I had, but you have something, right? Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
So I still have that sheet from 1999. It barely folds anymore. That's how old the paper is. It's the original one that I got. And I keep it in my backpack for all my college basketball games. And I'll pull it out every, you know, maybe once a month when I'm doing a game. It's not for me to really see the terms of how to say the ball's on the right wing. It's more just a reminder of, hey, this is how it started with me doing games at AER. I still have this sheet of paper in my backpack. And I'll never take for granted that now that's what I'm doing for my job. And that's why I pull that piece of paper out. So all the memories at WAER that I have stay with me my whole life, but even moments before a game when I pull that crinkled old piece of paper out of my backpack.
What would you say are some of the key things you learned at AER that you still think about now, like pulling out that sheet?
Yeah. Well, I always come back to, you know, we had such a great class, and so many of those people are still some of my dear friends today. And I always think it's about the relationships that you have and how important that serves you, and that nobody wants to work with a bad person or a jerk. You know, I can make it PG here. So, and that's still true today. Like, I didn't want to call games with a jerk in college, and I don't want to work with one now. And I think that people who are hiring these days, they see the same way, because there's a lot of men and women who are capable of calling games, but they don't want to hire people that aren't team players. And I think at AER, you learn to be a team player, and I've carried that with me, and it served me well.
Andrew, I got one more for you. Very fun, but not really what we've been talking about this whole time. But you've mentioned the Yankees quite a few times. Quit winning right around the corner. Just the season outlook. How do you think they do this year?
Gosh, it's been a while. Man, they haven't won a World Series since 2009, which I know sounds spoiled, but that's 15 years now, right? That's a long time. Yeah, I don't know. It's been tough the last couple of years. It's been neat getting my son involved, but he's not having the same winning experiences that I had growing up as a kid. So hopefully that turns this year.
I feel the same way, and I'm in college.
There you go.
Well, Andrew, thanks so much for taking the time with us. We really appreciate it.
Hey, anytime, guys. Have a great week.
Thank you.